0.
Weekend confirmed.
Ignition. Liftoff.
Hey everybody, question of the week time. I'm Garnett Lee. Hope you're listening to Weekend Confirmed every week out on Fridays at, I would say 11 a.m. here usually, but we've been a little late because we're recording on Friday mornings here to accommodate Jeff Kanata, who's in a play. He's a pro actor like that. You should check it out if you're in the LA area. We will have details on the show page. But for right now, we're going to do a question from Tom Lukash. As always, if you want to submit your questions, you can get to us through Twitter, Facebook, and we ought to do something, Ryan, with the YouTube comments for each week. You know, like maybe they could give us questions through that or something. I don't know. We'll figure it out for you. Tom's asks this question. It says, with new hardware on the rise, we've got a lot of that coming up in the show because there's been speculation this week about the new Xbox rumors. With hardware on the rise, what do you think the technological longevity will be? And also, what does this mean for software? So, let's tackle this in practical terms. Technologic longevity, as we know in this environment, is not very long. And it's never going to be very long because everyone is always pushing the bleeding edge. And I don't think that's really what you mean. I think that what you're thinking about here is, what's the functional longevity of this box? How long is the life cycle of the console going to be? So let's look at PS3 and 360, which are going into a much longer cycle than we saw with PS. It's not really much longer, but it's longer here maintaining the crest of solid games, of really high-end productions coming out for it. So the longevity is going to be impacted, and this also applies to the software, by how long it takes people to move over. What's the incentive to move over? Now, we've seen great sales numbers continue for the Xbox 360, so the announcement of a new Xbox is going to be an unknown. How quickly can we talk folks at 2K Games, at Ubisoft, at EA, into moving development teams from the 360 system, which was already an expensive system to develop for, and matches up nicely with the PlayStation 3, and probably matches up nicely with the new Nintendo Wii U, into a next generation system where they have to put more money into art, money into developing new engines, and in general have a longer production cycle just to get that next game out, which costs them more money. I think that's going to be a big contributing factor. So that hardware, longevity-wise, it depends on where you start the mark. The end mark is going to be another variable because, obviously it's another variable, but it's going to be another hard target to pin down because we are getting closer and closer to that top of the curve for diminishing returns. I think we all agree 360 games and PS3 games look fantastic right now. Whether it's a Skyrim or even if you go back a few years and look at games, they look fantastic. So it's how much can I do with that other hardware? One thing I've talked about a lot is that I hope to see more innovation in AI routines, in the number of interactive objects we can put into games. And it's how much they can push that front on the software that will really dictate how far out we can go with these boxes. And then finally, everybody seems to think that we're moving towards apps. I'm not sure how quickly we're going to get to that word apps. And what I mean by apps is that the box isn't going to matter anymore. It's going to be more about running this client software someplace, whether it's in the cloud or partially on your device. And how quickly we move into that era in games will also determine what these boxes are and how far out they go. So, does it really matter whether or not this new Xbox has a AMD 6000 series card or a 7000 series card? No. Consoles are closed boxes as long as a great software development kit is there, something so that the crackerjack programmers can write directly to the iron and have a great pipeline that they're happy to work with. The actual comparative nature of, oh, it has this card or this this CPU is very difficult to make, which makes it really hard to judge where that end line is. So, wrapping that all up for you, depends where the start line is. I think it's going to be hard to get folks to move over. But there'll be some incentives because of the new hardware. I think backward compatibility could be huge for the Xbox system, especially if it's a deal where I can take any game that I have, put it in there, and run it because the language is still universal. And then where is the end line? That's as much up to how quickly internet speeds come up and how fast we move over to an app-driven as opposed to a hardware-driven sort of ecosystem in video gaming. Hope you enjoyed this question of the week and that you're joining us every week. We've got a bunch of stuff coming up. DICE is coming up. GDC is coming up. And you know what? Before you know it, E3 is going to be here. Thanks for joining us on Weekend Confirms Question of the Week. We'll see you next week.
I don't know.
I actually wrote this on Twitter as well, if you follow me on Twitter. As a reporter, which is what my job is, my primary dedication is to the reader. And I think that examining the issue for the reader and showing them both sides and showing them why it's good or bad is what my job is. And I think that's more important for me as someone in editorial to present to you versus taking a personal stand. So that's why